That wasn't the best of an experience. I showed my favorite painting to her. She asked me, this is a young woman, why does she have cellulite? Do you know this feeling when you've planned something ahead and when the day comes you don't want to go? That's me right now. I've planned to go to the Landesmuseum in Hannover to attend an Impressionist painting workshop. There's currently an exhibition which is called Frischer Wind, Fresh Wind, which focuses on German Impressionists. And there's a workshop which goes along with it where we paint studies and analyze the Impressionist paintings. I'm quite nervous what everyone will think about me, especially if they're professional artists or art students, which will be a lot better than me. And I'm feeling a little bit like a fraud right now, but I want to try to get better at doing things on my own and don't want to let my fears stop me from having good experiences or doing things which I'm interested in. So I got into the museum with all of these thoughts and self-doubts in my head, but what I didn't know at that point was that at the end of this experience I would get to know someone who was a real friend. Before we started with the workshop, we got a guided tour through the exhibition. The exhibition was organized by different themes, for example nature or travel, and this was very interesting to me because you could compare paintings from different time periods and artists which all explored one theme. But what was most interesting to me was that the Nordic Impressionists were very different from the French Impressionists which invented the original Impressionism. And that was, for example, because the artists in the Netherlands, for example, were still very inspired by their old masters like Rembrandt, for example, and their paintings had still this very staged lighting. For example, just one light source like the moon and the rest of the painting was dark. But another reason for their darker paintings, especially at the beginning of the Impressionist period with Nordic artists, was also the different light conditions. When you look at the light conditions in Northern Europe, they are very different from the light conditions we have, for example, in the south of France. So that's why, especially at the beginning, the paintings were a lot darker, and as the Impressionist period continued, they started traveling to Italy or France, and that's when they got a lot more inspired by their use of vibrant colors and brighter paintings. And this was very interesting to me to see this transition from darker to lighter and their take on Impressionism. So the guided tour was very interesting, but unfortunately we didn't have enough time to talk about every painting in detail, and I think I will visit the exhibition once again to have more time with the paintings and look at them in more detail. After the guided tour we started with the workshop, and that was the part which was most anxiety inducing to me. At first I was so overwhelmed and didn't know where to start. We had to choose from 4 paintings which were included in the exhibition, and I chose the one I liked the most out of all of these paintings. And this meant it would be a challenge. So we started with trying to figure out the different colors which were used in the painting by having small papers with different colors, and we put these paper plates onto the painting, and this sounds a lot easier than it actually is, because when you see the colors compared to each other, they get a totally different look, and you can't really identify what the real color is. because next to each other the colors can look totally different than when you put them on a bright white background or a gray background. So that wasn't very easy, but I think very helpful to really analyze what colors were used by the original artist. And after that we did a quick sketch to get the proportions onto the paper. And then I got very overwhelmed actually. I didn't know where to start. I had my sketch and then I asked what mediums we will use, and she told me we would use gouache. And I've never worked with gouache and I hadn't even an idea how to paint with it. I was a little bit overwhelmed, but after a small hesitant moment where I just stood there and didn't know what to do, I just started with blocking in some of the background color, and I think that's when I got into this painting process and it became more natural to me. And I got into a flow where I could blend out all of the other participants and just concentrate on me, and my anxiety decreased. To me, the biggest challenge was painting the white dresses. This may sound stupid because it's just a white dress, right? But actually the white isn't white. Where the sun hits the white dress, it will become more yellow, and where shadows are, the dress will be more blue. And there's another challenge with painting the pleats. And at first I didn't really like what I was doing. I tried to work with a more impressionist painting style and used a thicker paint. And that's completely different from what I'm doing normally. Because when I'm working on my own paintings, I'm working in very thin layers and use more of a glazing technique. And I've never worked with really thick paint and wet painting. So this was something completely new to me and really a challenge at first. And I didn't really like where I was getting, because I had all of these really thick brush strokes and colors placed next to each other, but they didn't build a complete or whole painting, and it just looked completely off. But I got through this point and I just worked on and added more layers and added more paint, and somehow I got to a point where I really liked my result. This is my completed study and I really like it. I think I really managed to capture the essence of the original artwork, and to me it wasn't about copying exactly the original artwork, but instead trying to get the essence onto the study and the different lights and shadows. And I think I managed to do this very well, and I'm very happy with the result. And I think I will hang on to this study as a reminder of what I'm capable of, and that I can manage to do things on my own and also learn new techniques. That was a good part of this experience. What wasn't as good was I met a woman there who introduced herself as an artist, and we got to talk to each other, and at first I was very interested in what she was doing, and I asked her a lot of questions, and because we didn't have so much time to talk along the workshop or the guided tour, she asked me afterwards if I wanted to go for coffee with her, and Normally I don't do something like that, but I was in this mood of trying to do new things, and I said yes and thought maybe this could be an interesting opportunity. Maybe we could stay in contact and support each other. So I agreed to get a coffee, and actually this turned into a one-sided monologue. She only talked about herself the whole time. At first I asked her a lot of questions because I was genuinely interested in her work, and I wanted to know a lot about her painting, for how long she was painting, etc. But after a while I realized it was all about her getting more attention and selling her work to me. She showed me tons of her artwork, and I think I was kind in the way I responded to her. I don't want to bash her work in any way, and I think everyone's got a different talent and different skill level, and that's totally fine. I showed her work to my father, who's a photographer and knows a lot about art, and we both think that her work isn't very good from an objective point of view. For example, she doesn't get the proportions right in her paintings, and she doesn't seem to know much about color theory, to just name some examples. But that's totally fine. We're all on a different skill level. But she tried to sell her painting courses to me and asked me to leave a positive review on Google for her. It was just a monologue about selling her work to me, and at the end of it I realized she didn't even ask me for my name or what I'm doing for a living. And at one point I showed my favorite painting to her, which is the one which is hanging above me right now, and I'm very proud of this work. And she looked at this and she said, yeah, the proportions are good, but why does she have cellulite? This is a young woman, why does she have cellulite? I didn't even know what to say about this, because on the one hand it's a self-portrait of me and I'm a young woman, and as many young women I do have a little bit of cellulite, and I think that's totally fine, and we shouldn't bash women for having a body which isn't picture perfect. It's totally normal. I'm not trying to make anything more beautiful in my paintings. We should represent all kinds of bodies and all kinds of people in art. That's the one point which really bothered me. And the other point is she immediately switched back to showing me more of her work and trying to sell her stuff too. Later on I told her that I'm a part-time psychologist, and that's when she told me I'm half of a psychologist myself because of my life experience and because I can tell you what colors in painting are connected to which mood. Really? So I think it's really funny actually. I've gone into this experience with feeling like a fraud, having imposter syndrome, and then I met someone who's the actual fraud, who tells me she's an artist, she's above a psychologist because of her life experience and some color interpretation. So I think the story is very funny actually. I'm very proud that I challenged myself, that I visited this exhibition on my own, even though I was afraid. Even more proud that I managed to go to this workshop on my own. And I'm also very happy with my results. So in total, I think this was a very good experience besides this part with the artist. What I learned from this is that I need to do more things on my own, that I shouldn't shy back from challenging experiences, and that I'm capable of so many things, and that this is what really gets me forward in life. I'm just starting out here on YouTube, and I want to take you along on this journey and show you even more of my art process, visiting exhibitions, or anything you're interested in. So please leave me a comment if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Bye.